Hi everybody, this is Alchemist2 and I'm back again with another movie review. Recently I watched Everything Must Go, and this movie stars Will Ferrell and the guy who voices Sid from the Ice Age series, but I cannot think of his name, unfortunately. And I'm sorry it's escaping me at the moment, but his character's name is Frank, and he plays Will's sponsor throughout the film for his alcohol addiction. And the movie starts off with Will, he's in his car and there's a little present on his dash, and he's just gotten let go from his job that he's had for, I don't know, ever. And he hasn't had a beer for a long time, and he starts drinking Pabst ale. And the film's actually filmed in Arizona, and it's really, really pretty. It's just absolutely splendid, gorgeous country that I hope to visit at some point in time in my life. It's a teaching film and also very haunting, because a lot of the elements that occur are very true to life, especially Nick's alcoholism and the fact that he will do absolutely anything he can, even though he doesn't have a job, to get alcohol. And he meets a lady who came from New York, who's a photographer. Actually, she's a teacher and she's expecting a baby, and they become friends. He also meets a black kid named Kenny, who's really adorable and just cute as all get out, and actually a very savvy businessman, as we learn later on in the film. And Nick, Will's character, becomes a father figure to Kenny, and it's interesting because Nick himself, his father was a jackass, and we see that in one scene in the film where he's playing back a home movie and he's opening up presents for his birthday, and he gets a catcher's mitt and he has a bat, and his father is flipping him off in the background. It's just sad. And I don't know if his father's alcoholism drove him to drink, or whether he just did it on his own accord. It's never really given into any detail whether he did that or not, because he was trying to be like his dad, or that he was wrestling with some other issues himself. And it's actually quite funny in the first scene when he's let go from his job, right before he figures out his wife has kicked him out and all of his stuff is on the front lawn. But he's given a Swiss Army knife, and it has his name on it, and what he does is he sticks it into a Mustang, a classic Mustang that belongs to one of his co-workers, and just stabs the tire and then leaves it at the scene. I thought, evidence! He could be convicted for that, and they can take him to trial. And yeah, medical ethics, gotta love it. But anyway, he never was, but he was never able to get a job because his anger destroyed his chances of ever getting a job again at his previous place of employment. But later in the film, we see him redeeming himself, and we learn a little bit more about his relationship with his wife, and that they're never going to be able to make it work again because he's gone back to the sauce. But Frank, even though Frank eventually betrays him, and I'm not going to say how, that's just a small spoiler alert, but Frank betrays him, and you just feel like slapping Frank at that point in time, saying, well, how could you do that? And you wonder to yourself how often a person's sponsor, if their spouse is also going through alcohol abuse, that they would do that to somebody else who happens to be the spouse, going through a divorce and everything, and taking advantage of that kind of situation. I wonder how often that happens. But it is very realistic, and it's very haunting. But it's a good film, and it's well done, and it's taken in a very picturesque location and just absolutely glorious, and palm trees, and backdrop is really great, and we feel a lot of empathy and sympathy toward Nick and his character, and seeing him gather all together the pieces and going through the phase of being a total douchebag into somebody who really is the way he was before, which is a guy with a good heart, and he truly does have a good heart, and he's just going through the stages of rehabilitation, and anybody who's ever been addicted to anything knows that this is really, really challenging, and it can be done though, and anybody can overcome addiction, whatever it may be, too. But I like the movie itself. I don't consider it a perfect movie, but it's pretty darn good, and it's a good story, and even though it's depressing at times because it's really true to life, I give it 3 stars and 2 thumbs way up because I really like Will Ferrell, and you only want the best for Will's character, and he's a character that is abused by his father. It doesn't really go into that very much, but you get the picture that he wasn't treated well at all by his dad, and we know from what Nick's character says about his father that he was an alcoholic, and that he just wasn't really a father per se. It's interesting to see how Nick's character grows, and at the end, it's a very subtle ending, but it's Lady or the Tiger type, and you're left to your own conclusions, and I was kind of, I had mixed feelings about the ending, but other than that, I think it was a really well done movie, and I wasn't bored, so it was very good, and it was a really terrific film, and different considering that Will's done mostly comedic roles, and I think that whoever did this, it was his first film. I think it might have been autobiographical because I don't know the filmmaker that well, but I'm thinking it was, and I also think that Will might have been abused as a young boy, because I know a lot of comedians have really tragic checkered past stories growing up, and it just you can see why they turn to trying to make other people laugh to forget their own pain, and they hide their pain inside, and I think Will takes on the role of the character of Nick extremely well, and he did a just spectacular job. He was extremely believable, especially as a drunk wrestling with overcoming his addiction and wanting to redeem himself, and he does repent of his past behavior, and although Frank betrayed him, Frank says that he's supporting him and he's behind him all the way, and I'd like to think that somehow Nick was able to start his life over again with somebody else, or maybe just by his own, and was able to continue helping Kenny out, because Kenny he lives on the other side of the street, and he looks after himself, and his mother's taking care of an old lady who's dying, and it's just really, it's interesting to see how this neighborhood is very symbolic, because people live behind the doors of their houses, and Will, he's living out in his front yard, and he can see some things that shouldn't be seen by other people. There's one couple that engages in sadomasochistic sex, role-playing as they do so, and yeah, that scene was kind of eyebrow-raising. I thought, what the heck? But it's they don't really show anything. It just it's really odd. You get the gist by the way the camera angle is, and how the characters are uh, positioned in the clothing that they're wearing, what's going on in that particular scene. Um, it's a different kind of film and unique for the way it's done. It's not a comedy. It's a dramedy, and there are some moments in the movie that are enjoyable and funny in and of themselves, like when Nick is talking to Kenny and they're going back and forth with "your mama's so fat" jokes, and those were funny. And I really like the fact that it does have a semi happy ending, and the fact that uh, Nick is able to piece his life back together, so to speak. And the one thing that you might not have noticed at the very end, since it's really kind of subtle in the way that's done, is that Samantha, his pregnant neighbor lady, she gives him a baseball card, a picture of him, actually, Nick, of him as a player when he actually played baseball. And it's really sweet, and it just there's a kind of hope, that feeling of, hey, I can make something of myself, and my life's not over, and I can uh, sky's the limit. And of course that's never stated implicitly, they just do it through pictures, and it's it's interesting, and I like the way they do it. There was only one scene in particular when Nick is selling everything he has, and he there's a guy uh, who comes. Actually, this guy came and he gave him mouthwash, and he added some uh, uh, floss. He gives him the floss, and he says, always give the customer a little something extra. And I thought, yeah, it's true. I've been a customer rep too, so I could relate to this film. And the guy that he gave the mouthwash to, he comes back and he gives him his chair, and he actually hugs him. And that scene almost made me cry, because I just thought it was so touching and sweet, and it just showed him that, he had bettered himself, and he had improved, and he was going to continue to improve. But the scene itself, where the guy takes the chair away, there's really bad lens flare, so you can't really tell whether he has the chair on the back of his station wagon or not. But it's a bad shot. That was the only bad shot that was in the entire film. But now I'm rambling. I'm sorry. But if you like Will Ferrell, then I would definitely recommend this film, because it's unique in and of itself, and it's refreshing to see Will do something a little bit out of his comfort zone and stretch his acting muscle. And the other one that he did that was like this was Stranger Than Fiction, which is my favorite movie of all time. And it's a rom-com and a dramedy, and a little bit of a thriller too, thrown in as an extra. But it's better than Everything Must Go. But on its own, Everything Must Go is it's a pretty good movie in and of itself. It's entertaining and it's enjoyable, but it's haunting, and a little bit too true to life as to what I've seen. I've seen people going through addictions, and it just, yeah, it's difficult, and rather, I don't want to see that in a movie to be entertained. I'm sorry, that's too close. That hits too close to home. But other than that, it's a solid film, and it has a really tremendous storyline, and it flows from one thing to another. And in the end, you're led to believe that Nick does indeed turn over a new leaf, and he is continuing to improve himself. And actually, I think that could be a metaphor for human life. I think that we're all improving ourselves, no matter where we think we are in life. We're always learning, and we're always improving ourselves. So I think you can learn that from the film as well.